Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Contractor Compliance under the Building Safety Act. We'll be taking you on a journey from complexity to confidence. My name is Nish Sullivan, and I'm the Head of Business Development at Veriforce Chas, and I'm delighted to be your host today. Over the next hour, we aim to provide a clear, practical and informative session, which is designed to help you navigate your responsibilities under this critical legislation. We have some fantastic insights to share from our experts here at Chas and from our valued client, Mace. Before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded and a copy will be shared with all attendees afterwards. Your microphones will be placed on mute during the presentation to avoid background noise. But feel free to use the chat function for any questions that you may have. We will address them either during the Q&A or when the webinar is complete. The webinar will also be recorded and shared with you afterwards. So why are we here today? The Building Safety Act has introduced the most significant changes to building safety in a generation. It places a greater legal and moral responsibility on clients to ensure their entire supply chain meets stringent safety and competency standards. We understand that for many businesses, this can seem like a complex landscape. So our goal today is to demystify the Act and provide you with the confidence to manage your contractor compliance effectively. By the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of the Act's implications, how the Common Assessment Standard simplifies compliance, and gain some practical tools to close any gaps that you might have in your business. Most importantly, you will hear real-world strategies from Mace on how they are achieving their compliance goals. Now, let's meet the experts who will be guiding you through this today. I'm joined by two industry leaders, and I'll start by introducing myself before handing over to them. Again, my name's Nish Sullivan, and as Head of Business Development at Veriforce Chas, I work closely with businesses across the UK to help them build safer, more efficient and compliant supply chains. I'll be guiding our discussion and sharing insights on the common challenges we see some of our clients facing. Now I'll hand over to Ari, who will introduce himself.
Thank you, Nish. So yeah, I'm the Technical Standards Manager at Chas. So I've been at Chas for over 5 years now, and my primary responsibilities include ensuring that Chas maintains a robust technical standards across our product suite. So that encompasses health and safety, quality, environmental, and most recently building safety as well. And these are aligned to SIP and CAS standards. I'm also responsible for ensuring that our ISO 17020 management system operates effectively, which essentially helps Chas to deliver quality service for our customer base, helping to drive continuous improvement in our service delivery. So thank you for having me.
That's amazing. Thank you, Ari. And now over to you, Tim.
Oh, hi Nish, thank you. So my name's Tim Carey. I'm Head of Design for Mace's Construction Engine or Division, whichever way you want to term it. I spend most of my working days helping our 100 or 120 or so design managers to assist and deliver projects ranging from HS2 to Heathrow and Gatwick to data centres to life science buildings to some of London's biggest commercial developments. Parallel to that, I also help our leadership team in terms of our response to building safety, and I have specific responsibility for looking after when we take on principal designer duties under the Act and the regulations. So thanks for the opportunity to contribute today.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, Tim. Once again, it's a pleasure to have you both with us here today. To begin, I think I'll pass over to Ari, who will set the scene by providing an overview of the Building Safety Act. So over to you, Ari.
Thank you, Nish. So yeah, the Building Safety Act is the most significant reform to building safety regulation in a generation, as Nish mentioned, and it's intended to reform the building safety system. So why was this introduced and why is it necessary? So it was introduced as a direct response to the systemic failings within the construction industry and building management. So these were failings that were tragically exposed, as I'm sure we all remember, by the Grenfell Tower fire in 2017. That took the lives of 72 people, including that of 18 children. And while the initial cause of the fire was an electrical fault on the fourth floor, it was the aluminium composite cladding panels installed on the outside of the building that contributed to the rapid fire spread up the tower itself. So in that case, that combined with other failures in fire safety management, some of which the residents themselves had previously raised with the landlord, resulted in the worst residential fire in the UK since World War II. So following the Grenfell Tower fire, the government commissioned an independent review, which was led by Dame Judith Hackett, who published her final report, Building a Safer Future, in 2018. That report identified widespread cultural and systemic weaknesses in the regulatory system for the built environment. And some of these weaknesses included things like ignorance of the building regulations and industry guidance, unclear accountabilities, fragmented responsibilities, poor record keeping, and a culture that too often prioritized cost and the speed of delivery over quality and safety of residents. So the Building Safety Act was introduced to address these failures and to create a new regulatory framework that's designed to place resident safety, competence and accountability at the heart of the building process, with some focus on higher risk buildings, which pose the greatest potential risk to occupants and the public. But it's important to remember that it does not apply exclusively to higher risk buildings. It applies to all buildings. In terms of the objectives of the Building Safety Act, so the shortcomings that were identified by the Hackett Review reflect the objectives and the fundamental reform of the building safety system that the Building Safety Act aims to achieve. So this includes ensuring the safety and standards of buildings, which is the overarching aim of the Act. And it's important to note here that the Act is not concerned with the process of building safely, which is addressed by CDM 2015. It's about ensuring that residents are safe and can feel safe in their homes by creating a culture of accountability, competence, and transparency across the entire life cycle of buildings. So it's important to keep that distinction in mind of CDM in the context of the Building Safety Act. The Building Safety Act also aims to improve accountability for building safety throughout buildings life cycle, and that's from design through to construction and eventual occupation by residents. It aims to improve record keeping for key records, and it establishes the golden thread of information. It aims to improve the competence of people responsible for overseeing, managing, and delivering building work. It introduces some stronger penalties and sanctions for non-compliance, and it also aims to improve leaseholder resident engagement by establishing a route for raising concerns about building safety. And in terms of the scope and application of the Building Safety Act, there does appear to be some lack of clarity amongst those with duty holder responsibilities, judging by some of the queries that Chaz has received on this topic. So in terms of its application, the Building Safety Act is relevant to any person or organization that is involved in the design, construction, refurbishment, and management of buildings. So the Act applies to clients, designers, contractors, and building control professionals, all of whom must now demonstrate their competence and compliance with the updated building regulations. It applies to landlords, managing agents, and building owners who are responsible for maintaining safe occupied buildings. And it also applies to residents themselves as well, particularly those in higher risk buildings who now have new rights to access safety information and also raise concerns about their building's condition. As I mentioned, while there is some focus on high-risk buildings, it's important to acknowledge that these reforms apply to all buildings, and likewise, it doesn't just apply to new builds, it also applies to any refurbishment work on existing buildings as well. So where building regulations are relevant to the work, then the requirements of the Building Safety Act will apply. So if we then go into the next slide now, please. This brings us onto the topic of duty holders and responsibilities, particularly that of clients who, under the updated building regulations, now have a central role to play in ensuring that building work complies with the updated building regulations. So the client is, of course, the initiating party. They're the ones that are commissioning the work, and therefore they have the greatest influence over how a project is delivered. So some of these client duties, as defined in Part 2A of the amended 2010 building regulations, are to make suitable arrangements for planning, managing, and monitoring a project, including allocating sufficient time and other resources to ensure compliance with the relevant requirements. So this, essentially means appointing the right people with the right competencies in terms of their skills, knowledge, and experience and behaviors. So we'll come on to that in a minute as well. The client must also ensure that their arrangements are maintained and reviewed throughout the project, not just at project commencement. So they have an active role to play on any project. They must also provide building information to every designer and contractor on the project and cooperate with any person working on a project to enable them to meet their own duties under regulations as well. The client must also have arrangements for providing information to make designers and contractors aware that a project includes high risk building work and the nature of that high risk building work, if this is relevant. And they're also responsible for appointing a principal contractor and a principal designer in writing. And in that case, if the client fails to formally appoint a principal designer or principal contractor, then the law now ensures that someone always holds those responsibilities. So by default, the client themselves then becomes legally responsible for those duties until the necessary appointments are made. So this is essentially intended to prevent gaps in accountability and to ensure that someone is always legally responsible for compliance at each stage of a project. This reinforces one of the key lessons from the Hackett Review, that accountability for building safety cannot simply be delegated away through inaction. So it's important that all duty holders understand their duty holder responsibilities and consider how these will affect how you discharge your duties and how you'll demonstrate your individual competency and the organizational capability to undertake your role on a project. I won't go into each of these duty holders' duties individually, but if you read Part 2A of the building regs, and I recommend that everyone does, you will notice that there's a common thread amongst some of the duties that apply, regardless of the duty holder role you undertake. For example, there is increased accountability for all duty holders. Competency is a requirement for all duty holders, encompassing skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviors, which we'll come on to in a minute. And all duty holders must facilitate the sharing of information to ensure that other duty holders can fulfill their own duties under the regulations. So I just mentioned then that competence is a common requirement across all of the duty holders, and it's worth just taking a moment to focus on this because the amended building regulations facilitated by the Building Safety Act have made it a legal requirement to demonstrate competence, and this is defined under Regulation 11F of Part 2A. So this states that any individual carrying out building or design work must have the skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviors necessary, or the organizational capability to carry out compliant building or design work. And under this building safety framework, competence is not just about qualifications, it's about the combination of these skills, knowledge, experience, and also behavior. And when it comes to behavior, this is a deliberate addition under the Building Safety Act, and this refers to professional attitudes and the ethical standards required to carry out the duty holder responsibilities in a diligent and transparent manner that ensures competence on each project. So the Hackett Review, which of course initiated this reform, identified not just technical shortcomings, but also cultural failings as well. So the new regime now places an equal importance on behavior, and it requires that duty holders act with integrity and accountability, that they communicate openly, that they share relevant information promptly, and that they avoid concealment of non-compliance. It also requires that they prioritize safety and compliance over cost and convenience. As I mentioned earlier, one of the issues identified by the Hackett Review was poor record keeping, which is why the concept of the golden thread has been introduced, which is a digital record of building safety information. And of course, the quality of this golden thread will depend on the competence of the people creating and managing the information in practice. And the legal responsibility for ensuring that competent duty holders are appointed is the client. So if we go on to the next slide now, we can sort of speak a little bit about the consequences of non-compliance. So first and foremost, there are the legal implications. So failure to comply with the relevant duties under the Building Safety Act and the amended building regulations does constitute a criminal offence. And as part of their powers, the building safety regulator and local authorities have the ability to prosecute individuals or organisations for breaches of their duties. They can impose unlimited fines and in serious or repeated cases pursue imprisonment for responsible persons. The regulator also has powers to issue compliance notices or stop notices, and that will halt work until breaches are rectified, which can of course lead to costly project delays. Evidently, non-compliance will have a operational impact, and this is not just in terms of the extended program duration, but also the resources and time that it will take to retrospectively address any compliance gaps, which will create an additional administrative burden. And if we think about the reputational consequences of those organizations that demonstrate a poor record of compliance, or regular interventions from the regulator, then parties such as clients and investors may then become reluctant to engage with those firms, affecting future tendering opportunities. So in short, failure to comply with the Act can result in prosecution, financial penalties, and project delays that can halt progress on a development entirely. So to be successful in navigating these requirements, organizations really need to invest the resources necessary to ensure the development of compliant designs, accurate information management, and effective coordination between all duty holders. So if we go on to the next slide now, this brings us onto the Common Assessment Standard, or CAS for short. And this was developed by Build UK to provide a single industry-wide approach to addressing contractor competence and compliance. So in the context of the Building Safety Act, CAS offers a practical solutions for organizations to demonstrate that they meet the legal expectations placed on duty holders, particularly around competence, record keeping, and assurance. So CAS simplifies compliance by streamlining the contractor pre-qualification process. So instead of contractors needing to complete additional questionnaires for each client, CAS provides one recognized assessment that covers the core areas of health and safety, quality, environmental management, financial stabilities, and of course, building safety. CAS is the only assessment that assesses against the Building Safety Act via the Building Safety module, and this is not available via SSIP aligned assessments. So for clients and other duty holders, this means that compliance checks are consistent, they're transparent and traceable, which supports the selection of competent contractors in line with the Building Safety Act's emphasis on SCEB. So the benefits of this are that it provides consistency across the supply chain with all contractors assessed to the same recognized standard. It provides auditable records that demonstrate due diligence and supports regulatory evidence requirements. And it also reduces the administrative burden, saving both clients and contractors time while improving confidence in compliance. In essence, CAS provides a trusted and efficient framework for verifying competency and compliance, helping organizations not only to meet, but also evidence their duties under the Building Safety Act.
Thank you, Ari. That was incredible. I think it was very, very useful as well, certainly highlighting the who, the how, and the why in terms of this new enhanced legislation. There's a lot to unpack there. However, you've done a great job in providing us with some helpful context. I think that will be very useful to our audience members today. With that said, I'd like to welcome Tim Carey from Mace, who will take us through what their business has done and is doing to put theory into practice. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Nish, and thanks a lot, Ari. I'll try and build upon many of the points that Ari just went through really well from a main contractor's perspective. So the first thing I wanted to start off with really was dispelling some building safety myths. We've done about 50 training sessions with our supply chain through our Mace Business School to provide some support because we're all in it together, and some foundational learning on the building safety landscape. And one of the slides that we have in that training is, it might be hard to read on screen, but is about some building safety myth busters. And I thought I'd just go through a few of these really. So the first one is the Building Safety Act only applies to higher risk buildings. So this is quite common that we see, where people think it just applies to an HRB. And just so we're clear, a high risk building, I always think follow the logical steps first. So firstly, is it 7 or more stories or 18 meters or more above ground level? If it's not a high risk building. If it is, then the second logical test is, does it contain 2 or more residential units, or is it a hospital or a care home in the design and construction phase, but strangely not the occupation phase? So if it's either of those and it meets the height threshold, it's a high risk building. Now that definition might get changed in the future because arguably we do a lot of work on airports where there's hundreds of thousands of people passing through those every day. So there is, the government is looking at the definition, but that's how it stands at the moment. And, confusingly, I think a lot of the language that's come and the communications that have come out about the new landscape around building safety have focused on HRVs, perhaps for good reason, because obviously that's where people live. But, the flip side of that is people could quite easily fall into the trap of thinking that building safety doesn't apply to any other building. Now, just so we're clear, any project that did not have a building control approval before the 1st of October 2023 and had not made a meaningful start on site in terms of permanent works before the 6th of April 2024. So if it didn't meet both of those criteria, then it is in scope. And that doesn't matter whether it's a high-rise block of flats or it's just your own home and you're doing some works on that. If it's got a building control approval required, it's in scope. And therefore, it means it falls under the legislation. So the next myth buster is the Building Safety Act is all about fire strategy and protection. Well, whilst that is a major element of what the intent was behind the new legislation, we need to remember that the building safety and the building regulations are about compliance with all relevant requirements, whether that be with fire, but it could equally be acoustics, it could be structure, it could be anything. So when we take on principal designer and principal contractor duties in MACE, we are legally obliged to ensure that the design and or the construction meets all relevant requirements from a technical perspective. And on that point, the third myth buster is that the Building Safety Act changes those building regulations and what we need to do. Well, the legislation changes and reinforces much of the intent in terms of what it needs to do, but it doesn't actually change. It hasn't really changed like the approved documents or the technical standards by which we need to meet. The only exception to that being there's a new approved document that deals with secondary staircases, but that doesn't come into effect for a couple of years. So fundamentally, it's about what we should always have been doing. But most of the regulatory change is just about reinforcing it, because as an industry, as the tragedy at Grenfell proved, unfortunately, we didn't always get it right. The next mythbuster is, I don't need to understand it. Someone else will tell me what to do. Well, we're all here to help each other, and this is a learning journey for all of us. But equally, we have a duty of care as individuals and as organisations to make sure we seek out the information and we educate ourselves and upskill ourselves and develop our own competency in terms of what's required. And I always point people, I think Ari mentioned it, I always point people to Build UK's website, where there is a dedicated section on building safety with a whole raft of really good supporting information. The Building Safety Act doesn't affect me, or doesn't affect me as an individual. Well, actually, anyone any construction professional that works on a project falls under the Act to the degree to which your work is involved. And we all need to be able to demonstrate competency for the work for which we do. Bit tongue-in-cheek, the next one, but the next mythbuster, it's Mace's problem. Well, it is our problem, in terms of the roles that we undertake, but it's equally everyone's shared problem and shared responsibility. So we're here to support you, and we need you to support us, or our other contracting peers as well. The next one is the principal designer and principal contractor requirements are the same as CDM. So I think Ari touched upon this. So under the amendments to the building regs, so part 2A specifically, that establishes new duty holder roles of principal designer, principal contractor, and contractor. Now, they're new formal duty holder roles. They're similar to CDM, but they are very different. They have enhanced responsibilities, and they're very different and discrete to the ones in CDM. So it's a bit confusing that they've used the same commonality of language. And I always kind of think that if you think CDM is quite a narrow focus in terms of, are we ensuring that the design, is designing out risks associated with safety during construction and during occupation, and making sure that we're safe working on site. If that's quite a narrow focus, as I alluded to earlier, the duty holder roles under building regulations are focused with a much broader church of regulatory compliance, just not limited to health and safety. The last one is it doesn't affect SMEs. Well, as I alluded to earlier, it affects everybody. So as principal designer or principal contractor, MACE, we are legally required to ensure the competence of both ourselves and the people that act on our behalf and anybody that we appoint. So our subcontractors and our consultants, that they've got the skills, the knowledge, the experience and the behaviours to be able to deliver. And we have to remember as well that not everybody knows everything about everything. Competency is equally about understanding the limits of your competence and making sure that you bring specialists around you to supplement your own experience so that as a blended team, you have the appropriate competence to deliver the projects that we work on. Now, when we take on duty holder roles, what we've done is we've made sure that the principal designer and principal contractor, the people that we appoint to deliver those roles, that we've competency assessed them against a thing called PAS 8671 for principal designers and PAS 8672 for principal contractors. And then for the rest, and then we are now working through all the other roles within MACE, so the non-duty holder roles, whether that's design manager, surveyor, construction manager, and making sure that the competencies that we've defined for those roles are clear and defined and people are assessed against those. When it comes to our supply chain, we wanted to be able to rely on an industry standard. So that's why we've worked with Build UK and Construction Line and the other supporting Achilles, Chas, to develop a new question set. So specifically section 7 of version 5 of the Common Assessment Standard, which introduces a raft of new questions where those completing it are required to demonstrate suitable competence and evidence to deliver those duty holder roles, or the ones that are applicable to those. Now, MACE were one of the first, if not the first, contractor to get recertified under that version 5 question set. And we've now communicated to all of our supply chain that they need to be certified or recertified in a similar manner by the end of this year at the very latest, if they are to work on a MACE project. So some practical steps just for contractors or supply chain. So make sure you implement competence frameworks aligned to the PASs. Make sure you are investing in training your staff in fire safety and building safety awareness. And CITB offers a number of really good free courses alongside the content that you can see on the Build UK website. Make sure that your digital systems, I've not really touched upon it, but Ari did, are aligned to support the golden thread of information, so that ultimately the people that maintain and run the buildings, the high risk buildings in particular, have all that they need. And align yourselves with the Common Assessment Standard for pre-qualification compliance. The final lesson really is that, I've said it before, but we're all in it together. We're all here to help. If there's anything MACE can do or I can do on an individual level, please feel free to reach out. And equally, we look to draw upon your expertise so that we all get to where we want to get to together, which is safe buildings that are inherently safe for the people that will live, sleep, and occupy those in the future. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Tim. Your points really resonate with a lot of the challenges I personally hear from our clients on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure many of our audience members will appreciate those myth busters and take some valuable insight from your strategic approach to managing competence. It's clear that a robust strategy is certainly fundamental. This brings me to some of the common challenges I certainly see when speaking with businesses about their supply chains. In my experience, I speak with so many businesses who know they need to act, but they often struggle with a few key areas. The most common challenge is a lack of visibility. When you have large and diverse supply chains, it can be quite difficult to know who's compliant and where your risks truly lie. And this often leads to sporadic or reactive approaches to compliance. So checking certifications only when a project is about to start or when an issue arises. And this raises some critical questions you should certainly be asking within your own organisations. Do you have a clear compliance-led strategy for managing your contractors? And is your approach an always-on continuous process, or is it reactive? And ultimately, do you feel you have overall control and visibility of the risks within your supply chain? Without this control, managing your duties under the Building Safety Act become quite a significant challenge. And the key is to move from a reactive stance to one of a proactive risk management. That's where having the right tools and partners becomes essential. Next slide, please. So at Chaz, we provide a practical toolkit to help you achieve exactly that. We support thousands of clients in meeting their obligations under legislation like the Building Safety Act, and it starts with the Common Assessment Standard, which includes the Building Safety module that Ari mentioned earlier. This provides an industry recognised benchmark, ensuring your contractors are pre-qualified to a high standard. And our Veriforce One client portal provides the real-time visibility you need to monitor and manage your contractor compliance levels. You can monitor those statuses of your entire contractor network at a glance, instantly identifying any risks and creating an audible record trail. And this platform acts as your single source of truth, providing the clear, accessible data trail that's required by the golden thread principle. These tools are designed not only to meet your obligations, but to make compliance a seamless part of your operations. If you're interested in a demo of the Veriforce One client portal, just drop us a quick email and I'll have someone from our tech team reach out to walk you through how it works and how it can benefit your teams. Next slide, please. Thank you. So ultimately, closing the compliance gap is about finding a partner that you can trust. Our expertise in both the Building Safety Act and the Common Assessment Standard is unmatched. We provide proven tools designed to simplify your processes and, most importantly, reduce your risk. With our support, you can gain real-time visibility and control over your contractor network, helping you build safer, stronger, and more resilient supply chains. We're trusted by over 2,500 clients and more than 30,000 contractors to deliver compliance excellence. We set the standards so that you can build with confidence. Next slide, please. So some of you may have already received access to our toolkit. So in addition to this webinar, we do have a free guide that's available to help you walk through some of the areas that you may have gaps in your business. So it provides you with some actionable insights and practical tools, and there's expert advice in there to help you to close those compliance gaps. If you don't already have the guide, please feel free to email us at clients@chaz.co.uk. So before we move over to our Q&A, I thought I'd bring Ari and Tim back in to summarise the key lessons from today. Tim, from your perspective, what is the single most important message you'd want our audience to take away about proactive compliance management?
I think that if you pardon the pun, that we're on a burning platform. This legislation's been in place for a couple of years now already. It reinforces, as I said earlier, what we should have been doing anyway, even before the legislation. And we need to make sure that we get our collective houses in order pretty quick, really, to make sure that we're doing the right things for the people that use the buildings. We're all in it together. It can be a bit scary at first, but I think that's why we need to support ourselves to accelerate our journey towards compliance.
I certainly make you right on that. Thank you, Tim. Ari, one for you. From a technical standpoint, how do the Common Assessment Standard and Chaz work together to provide that essential assurance for clients?
Yeah, so as we spoke about, Build UK defines the core compliance criteria via the Common Assessment Standard, and most recently they made the building safety module mandatory to achieve this CAS standard. So Chas then applies that criteria consistently across our accredited assessment process, and that's supported by evidence-based assessments. So this integration ensures that every Chas assessment that is aligned to CAS provides independent assurance to the client alongside an audit trail to provide the necessary confidence that a contractor has been evaluated against a nationally recognized framework. So in effect, CAS sets the standard and then Chas certifies compliance against that standard, which gives clients a single reliable source of assurance.
Excellent point. Thank you, Ari. Tim, to round this off, how crucial has that sense of collaboration between Mace, your supply chain, and partners like Chas been to your success?
I think absolutely crucial. I mean, as I said, we've done a lot of work with industry, such as Build UK and yourselves. We've done a lot of work with our supply chain, with our clients. We have to remember it's not just it's not optional. We're required to collaborate under the legislation. It's an expectation as well. So I'm going to sound like a stuck record here, but it's going to be essential. We are in it together. We will get through it together, and we're here to support in whatever way we can do.
That's amazing. Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. Thank you both. It's clear that a combination, I think, of a robust internal strategy, industry standard tools, and strong partnerships is the formula for success. That brings us to the end of our formal presentation. I hope you found it insightful. We now have some time for some of your questions, so please feel free to type them into the Q&A box on your screen. We do already have some questions in, so let's kick off with our first question for Ari. Ari, do you believe that the industry fully understands its obligations under the Building Safety Act?
So as a short answer, no. For example, as part of the building safety module, we see health and safety documents be submitted. So there does appear amongst some duty holders and contractors that there's that misconception that the Building Safety Act is concerned with health and safety, which is an incorrect interpretation of what the regulations are really about. And considering that the Building Safety Act came into force in 2022 and amended building regs came into force in late 2023, some in the building industry still don't seem to have grasped the significance of the changes. So it's important that all those with any duty holder responsibilities take the responsibility to become familiar with the regulations and consider how they as an individual or their organization will meet those requirements. Or as we mentioned earlier, you may fall foul of the requirements, which can result in the legal, financial and operational implications that we sort of covered earlier. So yeah, there's some work to do, I think, in that regard.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Ari. And Tim, I think this one might be for you. What is the biggest challenge when it comes to achieving contractor compliance under BSA?
Contractor, well, if we use it in the widest term, it's probably just we've gone through quite a substantial exercise within Mace to update all of our processes and procedures to make sure that we cover all bases under the legislation. And that's not just in terms of new processes for where we take on principal designer or principal contractor duties, but in terms of our general obligations, even if we were, in quotes, just a contractor. We've had to work through each of our touch points in our processes to make sure that we've woven in the various requirements for competency, technical compliance, golden thread, all of those kind of work streams. We've diligently worked through to do that, and it's not an inconsiderable task to do. So I would say, the sooner that the audience, those on this call, can start that task, can work through it, speak to other people to learn about the journeys that they've gone on, because ultimately that's what they'll have to evidence against the Common Assessment Standard question set to get certification.
Well, thank you, Tim. There's another question here which I think I might take. So it asks, can the Common Assessment Standard certification fully replace the need for additional pre-qualification processes from clients? In a short answer, I would say yes, in time. I believe that CAS will replace the need for additional pre-qualification processes for clients. Build UK has developed an overarching assessment with the goal of creating a single industry-wide benchmark. Ultimately, we work together as recognised assessment bodies to reduce duplication, reduce the cost of assessment to contractors and also for clients. We enter into a data sharing agreement also, which means that we are obliged under the bylaws of Build UK to share certain data points amongst the client amongst the client portfolio to evidence compliance for contractors. I think that in itself has been a bit of a game changer. Historically, contractors have had to complete multiple standards or assessments that aren't necessarily accessible for clients. So I do see that in time, of course, we are covering stage 1 pre-qualification, so there will always be an element of additional questions that our clients will want to ask their contractors. But for the better part, I do see this in time replacing a lot of the additional paperwork and cost to both contractors and clients. We do have some more questions. Let's see, Ari. This one will be for you. What practical steps can smaller contractors take to align with the Building Safety Act requirements without excessive cost or admin?
Okay, so I think for small contractors, compliance with the Building Safety Act doesn't need to be necessarily complex or costly. So the key is to focus on proportionate and evidence-based actions that demonstrates compliance, that demonstrates competence of the workforce and the organization, and good information management. So I'd say, start with SCEB, so clearly evidence your skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviors. So keep records of things like qualifications, training, completed projects that show competence for the work you've undertaken, and use recognized competence frameworks aligned to the PAS documents that Tim mentioned. So it's PAS 8671 for competence requirements for principal designers, PAS 8672 for principal contractors, and there's also PAS 8673, which is competence requirements for safety in residential buildings. So it's worth sort of reading those and becoming familiar with those documents as well. Secondly, use a recognized pre-qualification scheme. So obviously CHAS Elite is aligned to the Common Assessment Standard. So this packages multiple compliance requirements into a single assessment, so that avoids duplication and provides clients with the trusted assurance that we mentioned earlier. Document and store your building safety information properly so that there's an auditable trail of information and that information is retained. Engage early with other duty holders on your project. So good communication and coordination between duty holders can minimize issues like late design changes, for example, which can then risk non-compliance with the building regulations. And lastly, I think it's important for all of us to stay informed. So the Building Safety Regulator, the HSE, Construction Leadership Council, and many other sort of organizations in our world do publish lots of helpful guidance. So using these resources can strengthen your understanding and your ability to adhere to the regulations without additional cost. So yeah, on that last point, I'll just say, yeah, stay informed and stay up to date.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Ari. Thank you, Tim. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. My sincere thanks to our expert speakers, Ari and Tim, for sharing their invaluable insights. And a huge thank you to you all for joining us and for your excellent questions. Don't forget to request your free guide, Navigating the Building Safety Act with Confidence, by emailing clients@chas.co.uk. If you would like to discuss how CHAS can support your business, please do not hesitate to book a consultation with us. Thank you once again for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.